Okay, so far so good. The first 10 chapters of Numbers have pretty much all been good news, all been resounding victories. Well, they're not actually fighting battles yet, but the Lord has told them to do things and they've done them. But it's not always going to be that way. It's not always going to be marching out triumphantly with a trumpet blast and shouts of victory. So here we have a cycle of unpleasant stories where the people are not acting as they should. Now the people complained about their hardships in the hearing of the Lord. And when he heard them, his anger was aroused. Then fire from the Lord burned among them, and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp. When the people cried out to Moses, he prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. So that place was called Taberah, which means burning, because fire from the Lord had burned among them. That's just one story. I don't know when that happens chronologically. I don't know if that happens here. I don't know if it really. I don't know. We've already shown how Numbers is not written chronologically, not arranged chronologically. I don't know. There are clumps of time that these things do fit in. I'm assuming this is taking place as they go from the desert of Sinai to the Promised Land, but exactly how it fits in a chronological sequence, I really don't know. The rabble with them began to crave other food. Now that could be referring to the mixed multitude that came with them out of Egypt, that were not full-blooded, pure Israelites. I'm not really sure. At any rate, somebody in the crowd began to crave other food. They've been eating this manna all the time now, for more than a year. And again, the Israelites started wailing and said, "If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish that we ate in Egypt at no cost." Oh, the Egyptians just gave them the food to eat. Those Egyptians were just such nice guys. They just couldn't help give the Israelites all the food they wanted to eat. Also the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. The manna was like coriander seed and looked like resin. The people went around gathering it, and then ground it in a hand mill or crushed it in a mortar. They cooked it in a pot or made it into cakes, and it tasted like something made with olive oil. When the dew settled on the camp at night, the manna also came down. I'm assuming, as I said before, this manna has never existed on earth in any other form. My understanding is that this is bread from heaven and has never been tasted or seen by anybody other than the Israelites during this period in history. If you're trying to find, it tells you what it's like here, but if you're trying to find manna, I don't think you're going to do it today. Moses heard the people of every family wailing, each at the entrance to his tent. Remember, they're all living in tents right now. The Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was troubled. He asked the Lord, "Why have you brought this trouble on your servant?" He's talking about himself here. "What have I done to displease you that you put the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I give them all birth? Why do you tell me to carry them in my arms, as a nurse carries an infant, to the land you promised on oath to their forefathers? Where can I get meat for all these people? They keep wailing to me, 'Give us meat to eat.' I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me." So Moses is getting tired. This is only about a year into it. I mean, we've got 40 more years to go. He's only been with them for, a year, 13 months since they left Egypt, and then however long the Egyptian sequence took. I mean, he hasn't even been with them that long at this point. And he's already tired of them. "I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me. If this is how you are going to treat me, put me to death right now, if I have found favor in your eyes, and do not let me face my own ruin." So Moses doesn't want to put up with this. He does not want to have to deal with this bunch of people who are going to be whining and complaining to him all the time, endlessly, by himself. So the Lord said, this is he's, I would say, getting pretty close to arousing the Lord's anger in his own right here. He doesn't, it doesn't seem, but he's going pretty far here in his own criticism of the Lord's assigning him this task of leading his people. The Lord said to Moses, "Bring me 70 of Israel's elders, who are known to you as leaders and officials among the people. Have them come to the tent of meeting, that they may stand there with you. I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take of the Spirit that is on you and put the Spirit on them. They will help you carry the burden of the people, so that you will not have to carry it alone." Now, way back when they first got to the mountain, in the middle of Exodus, we had a similar situation where Moses, his own father-in-law, advised him to delegate some of the authority to other people instead of taking it all on himself. This is in Exodus verse 18. This is specifically related to matters of dispute. When people had disputes with each other, they were all going to Moses. And they're all only Moses. And Moses' father-in-law in Exodus 18 verse 17 says, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you only wear yourselves out." And he gives them advice and says, select capable men from the people, appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, and have them serve as judges. This is very similar to that. In this case, we're referring to a broader context than just disputing matters, judging disputed matters. And so he's going to take Israel's 70 elders and anoint them as the spirit that Moses has been anointed with. Tell the people, consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow, when you will eat meat. The Lord heard you when you wailed, "If only we had meat to eat. We were better off in Egypt." Now the Lord will give you meat, and you will eat it. You will not eat it for just 1 day, or 2 days, or 5 days, 10 days, or 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and you loathe it, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wailed before him, saying, "Why did we ever leave Egypt?" But Moses said, "Here I am among 600,000 fighting men on foot, and you say, 'I will give them meat to eat for a whole month'? Would they have enough if flocks and herds were slaughtered for them? Would they have enough if all the fish in the sea were caught for them?" The Lord answered Moses. He's actually expressing some doubt in God's ability to do this now, isn't he? "Is the Lord's arm too short? You will now see whether or not what I say will come true for you." So Moses went out and told the people what the Lord had said. He brought together 70 of their elders and had them stand around the tent. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke with him. And he took of the spirit that was on him and put the spirit on the 70 elders. Doesn't mean that Moses no longer had it. It just means that these other 70 guys did too now. When the spirit rested on them, they prophesied. But they did not do so again. Prophesied, and of course the footnote on here says prophesied and continue to do so. So who knows? A prophecy in this case, and we'll see this again mentioned, kind of reflected later on, means that the spirit comes upon someone and literally, like, we would call it like possession, I guess. It like seizes that person and they utter things that they otherwise wouldn't utter. And they can only utter the things the Spirit allows them to utter. We're going to see actually an example of this with a pagan prophet named Balaam a little bit later on. Saul, the first king of Israel, will have this experience happen to him. I don't know what it looks like. I've never seen this happen with my eyes. I don't believe God communicates this way today, or at the very least, he doesn't do it here. If he does anywhere in the world, it's not here in this part of the world. He may still do this in areas of the world where written copies of his word are not widely available. Because he did this back then, before that was the case. Before written copies of his word were available, he spoke to people this way. He would speak to people through the mouths of prophets. Eventually, he would speak to people through the pens of prophets, and those pens of prophets would eventually compile this, and we would have this. And when this became full and complete, he no longer spoke to the mouths of prophets. Is it possible that in the world today, in regions of the world where the written word of God is not compiled into a language that people can understand, that he still communicates in the mouths of it could be. It could. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. I'm not going to limit God and say he can't do that anymore if he sees fit. I'm going to say, though, that I have not ever seen it. in this time and in this place and in this culture and in this circumstance. I've never seen it, and I'm going to be suspicious of anybody living in these circumstances who says they have seen it. But so I don't know really what it looks like exactly. I certainly don't know what it feels like. I've certainly never experienced it. So I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it feels like. I don't know how you would discern that or determine that. But somehow what happened here apparently was that the Spirit came upon these people, these elders, or whoever, really whoever, honestly whoever God chose to, honestly. And they spoke the words that God put in their mouth. In the end, that's the job of a prophet. A prophet is to speak the message that God puts in his mouth to speak. Whether it's Moses, whether it's these guys, whether it's a long-term assignment that lasts an entire lifetime, or a short-term assignment. Some guys, like here, they only apparently did it once. Isaiah had a long book where he wrote down lots of stuff over a period of many years. Jeremiah had a long book where he wrote down lots of stuff over a period of many years. Some of the other writing prophets that we have apparently had a pretty short career. At least their written output wasn't very much. I don't know. Amos apparently got a message from God. He was from the south, the southern kingdom of Judah. He got a message to go speak to the northern kingdom of Israel. He went there. He did that. They chased him out. He left. Apparently, went back to his home in Judah, and that was it. Apparently, from what we can tell, from what I can tell at least. In some cases, these guys spoke for years and wrote. And if they wrote, not most of them actually didn't write. Wrote down lots of material or spent years speaking. I don't know. However God saw fit to do it. But whatever is happening here, these men are speaking words that the Lord or the Spirit puts in their mouths to speak. Whether or not they did it again or not, I'm not clear, because the text we may have different copies that say different things, apparently, in that regards. But the Spirit came on them, and they spoke the word of the Lord in a way they had not done before, and may or may not have done again. However, two men whose names were Eldad and Medad had remained in the camp. Doesn't say why, it just says that they did. They were listed among the elders, but did not go out to the tent. Maybe they were hurt, maybe they were sick, maybe they were resting, I don't know. Maybe they were too old, I don't know. Doesn't say why, it just says they didn't. Yet the Spirit also rested on them, and they prophesied in the camp. So them not going there didn't mean that they didn't get the Spirit. I don't know. A young man ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. Joshua, son of Nun, who had been Moses' aide since youth, spoke up and said, Moses, my lord, stop them. He is loyal to Moses. Then Moses replied, Are you jealous for my sake? I wish that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his Spirit on all of them. Then Moses and the elders of Israel returned to the camp. Now a wind went out from the Lord and drove quail in from the sea. It brought them down all around the camp to about 3 feet above the ground, as far as a day's walk in any direction. It's a lot of birds. All that day and night and all the next day the people went out and gathered quail. No one gathered less than 10 homers. That is probably about 60 bushels or 2.2 kiloliters. Then they spread them all out around the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, and before it could be consumed, so before they'd even swallowed it, they had just taken a bite, the anger of the Lord burned against the people, and he struck them with a severe plague. Therefore the place was named Kibroth Hattaavah, which means graves of craving, because there they buried the people who had craved other food. From Kibroth Hattaavah the people traveled to Hazeroth and stayed there. I don't know if this was a plague that came from the rotten meat or what it was. Who knows? It doesn't say. This was a plague. Who knows? I'm assuming the victims of the plague were the ones who were the loudest in complaining about the food, and had gotten the rest of the people to join in on the complaints. Obviously, not all the people died in this plague, of course. So the ones who did apparently were the ringleaders of the grumblers and the complainers. More complaining. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. A Cushite is an Ethiopian. Now, the Bible itself does not talk about this Cushite woman It does mention another wife of Moses, or a wife of Moses, named Zipporah, who may or may not be this lady. Zipporah's family apparently were Midianites. We talked about his in-laws, his wife's father-in-law, and his brother, his mother, who were Midianites. So Zipporah was probably a Midianite. Maybe she was partially a Cushite, maybe. But a Cushite is basically an Ethiopian. Now, there is a tradition from Josephus that Moses got his Ethiopian wife while he was still a prince of Egypt, and while he was actually on a military campaign down to Ethiopia to, quash a rebellion or something. And while he was there, the princess of Ethiopia was so impressed by him that she sought to marry him, and he accepted, and that was partially how the conflict at the time was resolved, was him marrying this Ethiopian princess. That's Josephus' account. I see no particular reason to assume that's not true, but who knows. At any rate, he had an Ethiopian wife. The Bible doesn't mention who exactly this woman is, or where he got her, how he got her, how he met her. He just has one. Apparently she is with them. Okay, she seems to be with them, and it's because they're complaining about her. I don't think Miriam and Aaron would have any room to complain about her if Moses had left her behind in Ethiopia. So apparently she is with whoever this woman is, whether it is an Ethiopian princess that Moses got back when he was still a prince of Egypt, or whether it is Zipporah and she had some Cushite lineage in her blood in addition to Midianite. I don't know. But apparently she is with them. Now, their complaint is not really about... Now, first of all, Miriam is Aaron's sister, and Moses and Aaron's sister. These are all siblings. If we've forgotten who she is the sister of Aaron and Moses. We haven't heard about her too much, but she's around still. And they are going to be complaining, and they're going to be using the Cushite woman as a pretext for their complaint, but their real complaint is not about the Cushite woman. So that's just a pretext, an opening to get to their real complaint. The real complaint is this. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses, they asked. Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. So they feel like they're not being valued enough, basically. They feel like Moses is overshadowing them in the pecking order. Now, Moses was a very humble man. More humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. I can tell you right now, that line was not written by Moses. If you are the most humble man on the earth, you are not going to call yourself the most humble man on the earth. And if you call yourself the most humble man on the earth, then guess what? You're not the most humble man on the earth. So Moses did not write that line, okay? Now, I believe that most of this material did come from Moses, but there are some lines, such as that one, that clearly came from somebody else, that was written by somebody else after Moses, or in addition to Moses. And if anything, I think Numbers, of all the works of Moses, Genesis to Deuteronomy, I think Numbers is probably the book of the five that has the most material in it that was probably written by somebody other than Moses. And this is an example of that, just one line, one sentence here, because Moses didn't write that line. If he did, he wouldn't be the most humble man on the face of the earth. The most humble man on the face of the earth does not brag about being the most humble man on the face of the earth, or claim to be the most humble man on the face of the earth, because if he did, he would not be the most humble man on the face of the earth. At once, so he is not saying this. I mean, they're complaining about him being lifted up at a higher level than them, but he's not doing that. He's not making himself into that. He is not saying that I'm better than you, or that I'm on a higher level than you. He is not the reason why that is happening, if it's happening even. At once the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, "Come out to the tent of meeting, all three of you." It almost seems like a dispute between a father and his kids. These are all siblings. Moses, Aaron, and Miriam are all siblings. So it's like, here's the divine father and these three troublemaking children that he's got, that he has to settle a dispute between. So the three of them came out. Then the Lord came down a pillar of cloud. He stood at the entrance of the tent and summoned Aaron and Miriam. When both of them stepped forward, he said, "Listen to my words. When a prophet of the Lord is among you, I reveal myself to him in visions. I speak to him in dreams." Apparently, this was how God communicated to people back then. There, we read about the dreams of Joseph and Jacob even before him. Even Abraham had a experience where he fell asleep and had a vision of a pot passing between those pieces of the animals we talked about in Genesis 15. So God's communication with these people at this time, and this is still before the written word. Moses is writing this down as it's happening. Okay, this is at this point. However, his writings are probably more like a running diary than anything. I'm not sure how organized. I mean, as I said before, the stuff in Leviticus, which happened at Sinai, I think was probably written first. This stuff is happening. This is as it's happening. He would have been writing it down, or somebody would have been writing it down as it was going on, or just after it finished. So the written word is still in a very early form here, if it even exists. It's like I think probably Leviticus does, and some parts of Exodus, but the written word of God is still not taking shape yet, really. So he was speaking to people. Certainly, no one outside this group of people had it. So he was speaking to people, apparently through dreams and visions, and apparently this was somewhat accepted around the world. This time, they all had some concept of this. The Pharaoh did down in Egypt. We're going to read about a guy named Balaam coming along here pretty soon, who is apparently a prophet or a diviner who understands the way that God speaks to people and yet does his own thing anyway. So this is something that apparently God did. This is just how he communicated with people back then. Back when it says that Rebecca went to inquire of the Lord about the twin boys in her womb, he answered her somehow. I'm assuming he answered her through some sort of vision or dream, because that seems to be how he communicated back then, largely. So when a prophet of the Lord is among you, I reveal myself to him in visions. I speak to him in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, or mouth to mouth. Moses is not seeing God's face. We had a story earlier specifically showing us that Moses is not seeing God's face. So face to face may not be the most accurate way of putting this here. But he's speaking clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? So Moses is different. This whole theme about all this has been consecration or sacredness or set apartness or calling out, and being called out for a special use, designated for a higher purpose, being different, not normal, not being common, not being normal, being separate, being holy, set apart, consecrated, all this stuff. Okay, Moses is different from all the rest. He's been called to be different than all the rest. You have Aaron the priest, and you have the rest of the priests, and you have the Levites. Miriam seems to be the ringleader here more so than Aaron, because she's the one who gets punished. And I think Moses and Miriam might have had a pretty tight relationship. Miriam was responsible for Moses ending up in the house of Pharaoh to begin with, largely, as when she was a child and he was a baby. So Miriam might feel a sense of eldership herself over Moses because of her connection to him, and how maybe she doesn't feel like she's getting enough credit. Now, she is a woman, so she's not going to be in too high a position of authority, but maybe she feels that she's being overlooked in all of this. But Moses is different from the rest. Just like the Levites are different from the lay people of Israel. Israel itself is supposed to be different from the rest of the nations around them. And the Levites are different from the lay people of Israel. And the priests are different from the Levites. And Aaron is different from the priest. He's the high priest. And Moses is different from him. There are these rings of holiness and separation that are being made clear here. The anger of the Lord burned against them, and he left them. When the cloud lifted from above the tent, there stood Miriam, leprous, like snow. So she had a skin disease of some kind. All her skin was white and flaky and peeling off, or something along those lines. Aaron turned toward her and saw that she had leprosy. And he said to Moses, "Please, my Lord, do not hold." Now, he apparently was not leprous, so Miriam is being kind of targeted out here, I think, as the ringleader of this opposition. This was her idea. Aaron was just going along with it, apparently. "Please, my Lord, do not hold against us the sin that we have so foolishly committed. Do not let her be like a stillborn infant, coming from its mother's womb with its flesh half eaten away. So Moses cried out to the Lord, "Oh God, please heal her." And this is his sister, remember. He doesn't want her to suffer through this. The Lord replied to Moses, "If her father had spat in her face, would she not have been in disgrace for 7 days? Confine her outside the camp for 7 days. After that, she can be brought back." So Miriam was confined outside the camp for 7 days, and the people did not move on until she was brought back. After that, the people left Hazeroth and encamped in the desert of Paran.